Hi guys, it's Mrs. Wackerly. I am reading chapter 8 of Peak by Roland Smith. This chapter is called The Summit Hotel. When the message about my arrest reached Josh, he had been in Tibet on his way to base camp on the north side of Everest. With him were 25 clients, 15 Sherpas, and about 50 porters on their yaks. 12 of the clients were trying for the summit. The other 13 had signed up for one of the 4 lower camps along the northern route. The higher you climbed, the more it cost. I caught a truck heading back to Kathmandu and sent the others on to base camp, he explained. That's why I've been rushing around. I don't want to lose my acclimatization, and I needed to get back to my clients. They weren't too happy about me abandoning them on the way to the mountain. Thanks again for bailing me out, I said. Forget it, he said, leaning his seat back and pulling his cap over his eyes. Within a minute, he was sound asleep. Why had he done it? That was the question bouncing around my jet-lagged brain. He was my father, but that was a technicality more than a fact. I had written him at least a dozen letters over the years, but I'd never gotten a letter or even a postcard in return. Mom said Josh wasn't much for letter writing, and that there was a good chance he never got my letters. There weren't too many post offices in the places he hung out. So why, after all these years, did he show up? Guilt? Not likely. That emotion didn't seem to fit him. My mother told me once that Josh always slept like a baby because he had no conscience to keep him awake. He was demonstrating that right now, quietly snoring as we winged our way to Kathmandu. This is slowly, let me fix this. Slowly sloping down. Kathmandu. For me, the name conjured up mystery, adventure, possibilities, but the reality was something somewhat different. The city is noisy, grimy, and polluted. My eyes burned and I started choking as soon as we stepped outside the airport. Takes some getting used to, Josh said as our taxi sputtered into an unbroken line of traffic. You'll be staying at the Summit Hotel. Me? Just for a couple of days, Josh said. I need to get to base camp before there's a revolt. I don't have time to stay with you while you acclimatize, and you need to acclimatize slowly. You know the routine. I did know the routine. I'd read at least a dozen books about conquering 8,000-meter peaks above 26,000 feet, including the 3 books my father had written. There are 14 of these peaks in the world. It can take at least 2 months to get to the top of Everest, which is actually 8,850 meters tall. The long climbing time is not because of the distance, which is less than 5 miles, but because it's up. Most of the climbing time is spent sitting in the 6 camps along the route, letting your body get used to the thin air. If you go up too fast, you might get mountain sickness or high-altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE. Here's how HAPE works. Your lungs fill with fluid, you can't breathe, you go into a coma, then you die. The only way to treat HAPE is to get to a lower altitude where there's more oxygen, or O's as climbers call it. It doesn't matter what kind of physical condition you're in. If you climb up faster than your body can adjust, you'll get HAPE and your climb is over. Maybe forever. The only chance you have of reaching the top of Everest or any 8,000-meter peak is to climb high, sleep low, until your body is ready to make the push to the summit. In other words, you have to make sure your lungs keep up with your legs. It's a very bad idea to leave your lungs behind. The other problem with Everest is that there's only a small window when the weather is good enough to get to the top. 2 weeks, maybe less. Some years the window is only 2 days. You have to be positioned in the right place at the right time in the right physical condition, or you'll never make it to the summit. Because Josh spent most of his life training and climbing at high altitudes, he could almost jog up to base camp, 18,000 feet. Well, not really, but he could certainly get up there in half the time it was going to take me coming from sea level in New York City. Without me, he would be at base camp in 4 or 5 days. If he waited for my lungs to catch up with his, it would take him 10 days to 2 weeks to get to base camp. What he hadn't explained was how I was going to get to Tibet on my own, and he didn't get a chance to tell me right then because the taxi had just pulled into the courtyard of the Summit Hotel, where we were immediately surrounded by a swarm of laughing, smiling Nepalese. Hotel staff, he said. They obviously knew he was coming and were overjoyed that he was there. We got out and he introduced me. Not speaking Nepalese, I didn't know if he told them I was his son or his little brother. Regardless, by their expressions, they were very happy to make my acquaintance. They unloaded the gear, and we followed them into the lobby, where we encountered more pandemonium, this time from the guests. Women, men, trekkers, mountain climbers, old and young, gathered around Josh like he was a rock star. No pun intended. He signed autographs and answered questions until the concierge politely but firmly dispersed the crowd. "Please, please, Mr. Wood needs to rest after his long journey." Mr. Wood had no intention of resting. When we got to the room, he started sorting through gear and stuffing what he wanted into his backpack. "You're leaving now?" I asked, trying not to sound too whiny. "I have to." The last thing he jammed into his pack was a box of energy bars. I didn't say, "What about me?" because there's no way to say this without sounding pitiful, so I just stared at him. "Zopa will be taking you up to base camp," he said. "Aside from myself, he's the only one I trust to do it. He knows all about you." "Who's Zopa, and how does he know about me?" He sat down on the edge of the bed. "Zopa used to be a Sirdar. You know what that is?" "Head Sherpa," I said. Sherpas are mountain people who live on the slopes of the Himalayas. Without them and their climbing skills, no one would get to the summit of Everest. "Right," Josh said. "Zopa got me to the summit of Annapurna the day you were born. He was there when Terry called and gave me the news. Since then, he's asked me about you every time I've seen him, bugging me, really, saying that it's not good for a father to neglect his son." Obviously, Josh had not listened to him. "Zopa stopped climbing years ago," he said. "He's a Buddhist monk now, lives at the Indrayani temple. The Lama there has given him permission to forego his vows for a few weeks to take you up to base camp." "Forego his vows?" "It's not as big a deal as it sounds. I don't know all the details, but leading you to base camp was considered to be auspicious, meaning the right thing to do." Josh smiled. "And I'm sure the donation I made to the temple didn't hurt. They're a little strapped for money." "So Zopa is okay with this?" "Absolutely. He's curious about you, and he didn't say this, but I think he's getting kind of bored with being a monk." "What's he like?" "Cagey," Josh said with a smile. "If he agrees to do something, he'll do it, but he may not be doing it for the reason you think he's doing it, and he'll never let you in on why he's doing it." "Huh?" Josh was beginning to sound like Paula and Patrice. "It's hard to explain," he said. "You never know what Zopa's real motivation is. I asked him to take you up to base camp. He said he would, but he's not taking you up there just to do me a favor or because I gave money to the temple. There's another reason. More likely half a dozen reasons he agreed to do it, and you and I probably will never know what all of them are." It was a sad day when he retired, I can tell you that. He's been on the summit of Everest more than any other human being. At least that's the rumor. Zopa says he can't remember how many times he's reached the top, but I think he knows exactly how many times it's been. He speaks perfect English, and although he doesn't talk very much, when he does, you need to listen very carefully to what he's saying. The Sherpas do. A lot of them drop by the temple before they climb to have him do a reading. If he tells them not to go, they won't go up, no matter how much money we offer them. "How do I get in touch with him?" "He'll come by in a day or two. In the meantime, you'll need to sort through this gear. Most of it's yours, and you'll need all of it to get up the mountain. I wasn't sure on the sizes, but if something doesn't fit right, tell Zopa and he'll swap it out at one of the shops downtown." He looked at his watch. "I'd better get going." He started toward the door and stopped. "Charge whatever you eat at the restaurant to the room. Do you have any cash?" I shook my head. He pulled out a thick wad of money and peeled off several bills. "It's not as much as it looks like. 7,000 rupees is about $150 US. I took the bills and set them on the dresser. "I'll see you in a couple weeks," Josh said. "Maybe less if Zopa thinks you're ready. Oh, before I leave town, I'll call your mom and tell her you're okay." I interpreted this to mean he would call and lie to her about where we were and what we were doing. Better him than me. "Enjoy the trip," he said, and with this he was gone. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the door. My head was kind of spinning, but it wasn't from altitude. I think it was Josh's energy that was making me dizzy. There was a light tapping on the door, so faint I barely heard it. I opened it. It was the concierge. He gave me a slight bow. I will turn down your bed." He wove his way through the junk as if it wasn't there, pulled the comforter back, and fluffed the pillows. When he finished, he looked at the window. The curtains were drawn. "This will not do," he said. "You are missing the setting of the sun." He pulled the curtains back with a flourish. Behind them were the Himalayas, washed in orange and pink light. They were much bigger than I had ever imagined. That's all of the chapter.